8 p.m. Eastern. It's on ABC and ESPN. It is Indiana at 11-1. They're the 10 seed on the road at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the 7 seed. They also are 11-1. The Irish are a 7.5 point favorite, Dan Rubenstein. As I said, we're going to be doing the live stream across all the platforms Friday night. So grab a beverage, grab a snack, stop on by, pop us up on the iPad or the second screen of your choosing.
Yes.
These teams are similar to me in the sense that they have beaten the brakes off nearly every opponent. There's a question, though, for both about whether or not they hid behind the schedule.
Sure.
Like, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I think that's a totally fair question. I actually would like the answer to that question. Pro Bill Connolly, he says that Notre Dame will be the, I guess, this game against Indiana will be the game against the best defense they have played all season long. Okay, so to the point, like, we're going to get a tester for both of them. And so that in and of itself, I think, is interesting just from the standpoint of two teams that everybody argued about for a while, being overrated. Now they play each other in round one. I haven't seen a whole lot of people picking Indiana.
Same.
And I kind of wonder if that is the danger with Indiana, right? Like when we had Bill on, he said, this is a good Indiana team. I could see them winning this game. Personally, I don't think it's that hard to build a case for Indiana to win this game. I was wondering where you came down on that idea, because as I was trying to stack these games up in my head, this is one of the games that I think, even though I'm rooting for Notre Dame, that I think I'm least confident in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. It's just, it's the data points, more so with Notre Dame than Indiana. And it's not a positive data point for Indiana, having, played in the last few games, both against Michigan and Ohio State, and not, pulling out the Michigan game, but not looking terribly strong in that second half. And then not having a competitive offensive line. Not even a championship offensive line, a competitive offensive line against what Ohio State was doing up front in blitzing from different angles and just losing one-on-one blocks to Ohio State up front, with Curtis Rourke running for his life or falling for his life in that matchup against Ohio State, which was like a huge prime time. This was not an Ohio State team that snuck up on them, and it was not an Indiana team that snuck up on Ohio State. This was, everybody had everybody's attention. And Ohio State was able to engulf Indiana up front. Notre Dame-wise, we just don't have that data point. We don't have that data point recently. We have it against USC speed on offense, but in terms of a line of scrimmage, this is what Notre Dame looks like against a similar team. Doesn't really exist, and you can point to Texas A&M week 1, but in terms of down the stretch, which is kind of how I looked at these teams, it doesn't really exist for Notre Dame. So you're going on what you believe Marcus Freeman to be or not be in terms of getting a team ready for a huge moment.
Got a big contract
Big extension.
So
saw that.
They're pleased with the job he's doing. I'm pleased with the job he's doing. I'm glad they're
think you go 11-1, whatever.
Locking him up. Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense to me. And there is something about Notre Dame taking care of business, largely throttling the teams they've played. Indiana very similarly. That makes it a little bit difficult for me. Now, I also have my rubric that I go through every year. It's my quarterback and defense.
Yep.
I think Curtis Rourke, in terms of statistics, in terms of ceiling as a passer, pure passer, which is not all of Riley Leonard's game, is higher than Riley Leonard's. I think Elijah Surratt is a more dependable receiver than what Notre Dame has had. And maybe that's just because of Riley Leonard's limitations or confidence going downfield, whatever. So I tend to give, just in terms of Curtis Rourke isolated, the advantage throwing the ball to Curtis Rourke, who can also move. I think Notre Dame has a better offensive line. I think Notre Dame has more ways to suffocate a team at their best on offense. And I think Notre Dame has the defensive advantage, even though I actually really like Indiana on defense. And all things considered, given their own offensive limitations, I thought they performed decently well against Ohio State in that matchup.
The defense wasn't the problem in that game.
Defense was not the problem.
No.
They ran and played defense until they couldn't because the offense just left them on the field.
Yeah, defense was not the issue. It really wasn't the issue in that game.
I'm going with Notre Dame here. I don't think it's going to be especially high scoring. I think there's going to be some rust for both of these teams, but you're going to give me the home field advantage of Notre Dame. You're going to give me maybe a slight defensive advantage for Notre Dame, without the data points, mind you, but that's how I see it right now. And you're going to give me perhaps a more consistent rushing attack, perhaps, for Notre Dame. And I'm going to take the Irish. I think there's just something dangerous about Riley Leonard on 3rd and 3 that they're going to run him Riley right, Riley left, and that's fine. And I think that's good enough to win a game like this. I think Indiana's a dangerous team. I think Indiana's a really good team. I think Notre Dame's deeper, and at this point, that matters. And so I'm going Irish here. What did I write down? I wrote down 30-21. So not terribly high scoring, but I think Notre Dame gets to 30 eventually in this one. And I think Indiana might have some similar issues dealing with Notre Dame's front, but Indiana's going to have, I know I'm long-winded with this, Ty, and I apologize.
No, keep going.
I'm setting you up because you will have more detailed Notre Dame thoughts. Indiana will do a better job after seeing what Ohio State was able to do. Indiana should have a better break glass in case of situation for this game. If things are trending like they are, or like they were for Indiana against Ohio State, Indiana should have a better plan B and C because nobody else was able to expose that,
sure,
at least short of, Michigan in that second half specifically. So I think Indiana will have a better break class in case of. And Indiana's just really good. I just don't know if that on the road in this spot, they're built for it. 30-21 Irish, which I guess means they cover, right?
They would cover. Yeah, in that sense, they would cover. Let me lose the broadcaster voice for a second.
Let's go. Let's take a knee and just be cool.
Let's take a knee and just talk like people. We don't compare notes when we do this.
No.
We know which games we're previewing. We know the basics of it. You and I do not compare. We do not have a common sheet that we work off. Not for the preview. Sometimes
you don't get to see the legal pad. No.
Sometimes for the summaries at the end of the week, we have a shared note set, but not for this. I have two questions surrounding this game, both of which you alluded to.
Okay.
The first one is the Curtis Rourke thing, and it's specifically, can Indiana protect him? Because as you mentioned, they couldn't against Ohio State. They gave up 5 sacks. He gave up a ton of pressure. He had, I jotted down 3.8 yards per attempt. This is the thing that I'm most concerned about as a Notre Dame fan, because I don't think the Notre Dame pass rush is quite as good as Ohio State's, and I do think Indiana's going to be able to throw on him.
Right.
And when they throw, they're 12th in the nation based on percentage to outside receivers, 12th in the nation at throwing to their outside guys, which means I think more work for Notre Dame's young set of corners, Christian Gray, who I've talked about, Leonard Moore, who's had a good season. These guys are young. They've been very good. But again, to the point that I think you've been making, have they really been tested against quality quarterbacks? Jade Mayava went for 360 against this defense. The defense held its own. I'm not putting it all on these young corners, but that's something that I think we need to know more about. We need to see what they look like against a good passer, pure passer, as you said, in Curtis Rourke. I think there's an opportunity there for Indiana to make some hay through the passing game. They got to protect Curtis Rourke, though.
Yes.
Nothing's going to happen unless they're protecting him. That's the first question. What does that look like? What does that battle look like up front? The second thing is, you mentioned Notre Dame's rushing attack. Can Notre Dame rush for 5 yards a carry? I'll just put a number on it.
Yeah.
And that's not to say it needs to come specifically from Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Riley Leonard. It can be as a collective. I don't care how they get to 5 a carry. I'm going to worry, though, if they're not able to get there. Because if they're not able to get there, that probably means they're not popping off some of those chunk plays on the ground.
Yep.
For what it's worth, all 3 of those guys individually are averaging over 7 a carry. So if you're able to keep the whole thing down under 5, which has happened sporadically this season, that puts more pressure on the passing game, which is improved, but I still think works best as a function of the ground game. It's just not an explosive passing attack. And if you have to rely on that, potentially we're looking at a game that it turns into a shootout, devolves into one where you got to win through the air. It's not to say they can't do it. I think they've got talent to do it. It's just not something we've seen. And I don't think it's something you can trust. Those are my two questions. Can they protect Curtis Rourke? Can Notre Dame rush for 5 a carry? My sense is that this is a close football game.
Okay.
So I'll say it right now. I would not want to give 7.5 points here, which I think is the line at the time of recording here. That could move. My sense, though, like yours, is that this is a Riley Leonard thing, and that Riley is the difference here. We've talked about how Notre Dame has not played that many good quarterbacks. How many good quarterbacks has Indiana played like this?
That's true.
Like this. A guy who's mobile, a guy who's an improviser like Riley Leonard, who doesn't really fit neatly into any of the boxes that we define quarterbacks by. That's Riley Leonard. So Indiana playing their zone defense like 83% of the time.
Right.
This is a situation where Riley Leonard and his mobility, if he can move the pocket, if he can kind of extend plays with his legs.
Well, you'd rather be a good zone team, right, with eyes on the quarterback than
Absolutely.
turning your back and running downfield and giving Riley Leonard the grass. Yeah.
Absolutely. But where I'm going with this is if we see early on these situations where he is sort of scrambling, he is getting outside the pocket, and boom, Mitchell Evans is sitting in a hole in the zone.
Right.
Easy 7-yard gain. Or maybe it's Jaden Greathouse or Chris Mitchell or Bo Collins. Somebody just finding these pockets where he's able to extend the play, allow the defense to break down a little bit, go for an easy 7 or 8 yard completion. That is, I think, how you will know that Riley Leonard is making an impact in this game. They are going to do the thing where it's Riley right, Riley left.
Yeah.
They're going to find ways to incorporate RPOs to try and get guys out of position. But I think for me, he's the difference in this game. I've got it close to your score, but not exactly. 27-21 Notre Dame wins at home.
What is your pit stain number for Riley Leonard on third down?
Pit stain number?
Yeah. So your pit stain, like what is causing you to perspire underneath your arms when you see the 3rd and number? 3rd and 8? Because Notre Dame is they're pretty bad on 3rd and long because when it's obvious passing downs and even if he can get you 4 or 5 yards on the ground, it's not going to be enough. Is it 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 plus? Where are you somewhat confident?
I think their default mode in those 3rd and longer-ish situations is to just let Riley Leonard run for it. Drop back to pass, but then just go for it. That's what he's been doing.
Right.
I would say probably 3rd and 8.
3rd and 8. So Notre Dame, I think, is 129th on 3rd and 7 plus in terms of success rate. So something to watch out for. That those 1st and 2nd down, and what you said is completely accurate, right? If they're getting 5 yards a carry, you're not going to have to worry about that number that much. That's what I'm looking for, the pit stains.
I'm curious to see what that ground game looks like because everybody in the universe knows that that's Notre Dame's deal.
Right.
They're not Navy, and they obviously have a fair amount of variability with how they can deploy Jeremiah Love and Price and Riley Leonard in the running game. Again, the passing game works because of the running game, not the other way around. So if the running game isn't working, then suddenly we got to start asking questions about, which I still think Notre Dame can win in a situation like that.
Right.
Notre Dame can win this game in a rock fight. But then I go back to that first question of, are they able to get to Curtis Rourke, upset the balance of that passing attack? We didn't mention much about Indiana's ground game, which is pretty good in its own right.
Yeah, absolutely. Justice
but
Ellison. Yeah. Ran well against Ohio State.
Ran really well. So I think this will be a good game. Like I'm actually really excited about this game. The closer I think we get to it, the more I doubt Notre Dame's chances to win in convincing fashion. But I've watched this team all year. I've watched a lot of Indiana just in the build up to this preview. Went back, watched all their games as well. These are two good football teams. This should be fun on Friday night. So hopefully you can join us out on our live stream.
Mm-hmm.
We can link up Smell Ties Hair to this if you want.
Of course we can. SmellTiesHair.com.
We can do that.
No brainer.
If you follow us across any of our social platforms or email any of that stuff, we'll make sure that you're notified as well.
What do you make of, by the way, Marcus Freeman versus Curt Cignetti? The chess. Is this the biggest game of Marcus Freeman's career? He was an interim in a Fiesta Bowl game.
Oh, I think this is definitely the biggest game. Yeah, absolutely.
What is your confidence level like with regard? And Ty's a Notre Dame homer, of course, but what is your confidence level in terms of Marcus Freeman rising to this spot?
I think reasonably good.
Okay.
I think reasonably good. I think he has progressively over the course of the last couple seasons shown growth with how he manages situations. Now, not in the Northern Illinois situation.
No,
okay?
that's okay.
All right. Everybody's got one of those. I do think the way he's been able to kind of, through injury and through the adversity of losing in week 2, whenever it was, Northern Illinois, I think he has shown real growth with himself as a coach, with his staff getting organized, and then with the team. You know, there have been a lot of challenges for these guys this year with the line and then all the injuries they've had, specifically defensive injuries. It's been a lot. And I think they've managed it pretty well. So that's not game day type things.
Right.
But I do think that he's
big picture stuff.
Gotten better as a coach, and I feel pretty confident that he'll at least be able to match Curt Cignetti, who I think is a great coach. I think Curt Cignetti is great on the day of and knows how to scheme. It just may be one of those things, like you said, where Notre Dame's got a little more talent.
We're also in a time where we talk about like the pressure cooker of Ryan Day and Ohio State and overthinking things, and not that it necessarily applies to Marcus Freeman. Pressure is squarely on Notre Dame. There's zero pressure on Indiana. They're the team that can play loose gravy, right? This is free football for Indiana. Whereas
house
Notre
money.
Dame,
You're playing with house money.
Even if Notre Dame and their players had nothing to do with playoff losses or big game losses of years past, there is that fog looming over the program where it's just like same old Notre Dame, get to the postseason and just don't win in a spot they should or should be competitive, or is this a new Notre Dame?
Yeah.
That's the, it's fully on Notre Dame. And that to me is interesting, that like Indiana should just come into this game like happy and loose, right?
Yeah. I would think. By the way, our guy Sean McDonough going to be on the call for this one with McElroy and Molly McGrath.
That's premium play-by-play, Ty.
Premium play-by-play. Let's move on to Saturday, Dan. Noon. Saturday, December the 21st on TNT and Max. New spot for the game.
Who's calling this game?
This is a Mark Jones game. Mark Jones, Roddy Jones, Quint Kesenick.
That's right, because it's an ESPN production licensed or syndicated out to TNT Max. Okay.
That's right. So it'll be familiar voices, if nothing more.
Yes.
We do have some breaking news about this game, by the way. I don't know if you saw this. Yeah. Penn State's backup, Bo Prabula, is in the transfer portal.
I did see that.
He will not be with the team during this game, during the playoffs at all. It is, I think, a bit of a bummer for Penn State. He was a big part of the offense.
Definitely an element of this offense, yeah.
He was a big part of this offense. To not have him for the biggest games, hopefully plural, of the season's a bummer. I guess the bright side of this is that Drew Aller announced he's coming back next year.
Probably those two things are related-ish, yeah.
I would assume, but this is another one of those instances where the calendar just sucks.
Yeah.
And I don't blame Bo Prabula for wanting to go somewhere and play. He's been pretty good in limited action this year. It's just kind of the nature of the beast now with the way the calendar is set up, that he's probably got a deal from somewhere, I'm assuming, on the table, contingent on him doing it right away and not getting hurt. And so he's making the move, which is, I don't think that has any sort of catastrophic effect on this game, but they did use Prabula in a bunch of situations where he's not going to be available. I don't know if
short yardage, red zone, tricky looks.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe this means more Tyler Warren snaps at quarterback. I don't know.
Right.
But just commit that to memory that Bo Prabula is not going to be.
And I don't think it was. Playing. I don't think it was an option for him to stick around. I think that's like the James Franklin policy. Some coaches are like, stick around, help us out while you find your place. Kenny Dillingham talked about that with ASU transfers. Like, hey, we're going to do everything we can to make sure you shine wherever you go. If you want to, come practice and lock in and see how you feel, great. And I know Kirby Smart, those guys don't stick around. I don't think Oregon guys stick around. Penn State guys don't stick around. It's, whatever the coach's policy is. But yeah, changes a little bit of calculus for Penn State's options for sure.